Welcome back to part 2 of our Mastering Our Thinking workshop here as part of the Sacred Self-Healing Community. So we're going to jump straight into part 2. We covered aspects of the difference between ego and higher thinking, and how ego thinking, which still needs to be defined a little bit. We need to investigate what actually triggers our ego thinking. But we've ended up in part 1 the realization that if we follow our ego, regardless of whether we know all the mechanics of how it influences our thinking, the best we can achieve is survival. Survival of the ego, survival of our body, of our personality, and all the things that come into this. And we've illuminated why it is important to even wanting to master our thinking. And if you look at this chart here on your screen, you can see the order in which we ultimately become able to harmonize ourselves, to harmonize this schism between ego reality and soul reality, this duality that we all have in us between the 3D material self that is reigned or controlled by the ego, and the spirit being the true self that we all feel in us, that is not necessarily bound to the 3D reality. And how to better master this. You can see here that mastering our thinking is at the very beginning of this self-mastery training. And that's often a surprise to everybody, because we have this belief, and with it also the opinion and the life view that the more we think, the more we know, the better our life is, or the more we can be in control. And while there is some truth in it, you can see here in this hierarchy of self-mastery that mastering our thinking is really vital for everything else. Okay, and not in the way our ego thinks. Our ego thinks that if it just does more, if it just thinks more, that it can get a better handle on things. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? This is the reason why we have a tendency to ruminate, to loop in our thoughts, and why we have mental health issues such as anxiety and so forth, because we are basically in an automatic cycle there, that we feel almost powerless over, namely the thinkingness. I want to ask you guys a quick question here about your personal experiences. Who of you experiences their own thinkingness as something, I don't want to say negative, but something that is maybe limiting for you, or makes it hard for you to fall asleep at night, or even torments you to a certain degree? Who of you is aware of that? The role of your thinking. Yes, Linda is sharing it's overwhelming at times. Like overwhelming. Yes, too much thinking. Now, let's just kind of really take this in. What you're saying is that your thinking can have power over you. Is that what you mean with that? When you say too much thinking? Yeah, that it can be overwhelming. It can be overpowering, right? So it means that, it can lead to loss of sleep, and we all know what the loss of sleep can lead to. It can lead to physical issues, it can lead to emotional issues, it can lead to all kinds of practical issues. So if your thinking is not in your control, what is then? This is something you guys need to investigate. Any guesses? Who wants to share? You can turn your mics on. They're live. If you are not in control of your thinking, who or what is? All
For
right.
me, that busy negative mind, I think, is my ego.
Okay. Well, this is how a lot of people feel. And once you kind of make that distinction between negative thinking and positive thinking, it's easy to blame it onto something, right? Let me just call it this way. It's normal, though, that we do that. But I want you to go a little deeper here. We just learned that our ego is important for our survival, for a lot of different things in life. And, it may not be able to make us happy, but, it has a function. So is it fair to say that it is our ego that controls our thinking? Or is it even fair to blame the ego on all things negative in our life? Or is there more? Linda, since I have you here, would you like to describe what that feels like when you're laying in bed and you're doing too much thinking, as you called it? What that's like?
Yeah, I
What's going
find
on?
that, yeah, when I get all messed up like that and my mind is racing, and
Mm-hmm.
often it's negative or a gazillion things that I have to do or an urgency to get up or whatever. The reason I think it's ego is I sort of call my ego my brain, my head mind. And how I get out of it is by breathing into what I call my heart mind.
Okay.
And so that's why I call it ego.
All right. This is a very good distinction that you're making here. So you're not blaming all thinking onto your ego. You're blaming a certain kind of thinking to your ego.
Yeah. Yeah, the fear thinking probably.
The fear thinking. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Okay, so now you're qualifying it. It's the kind of thoughts that are based on fear. What other kind of negative? Yeah, I'm putting quotation marks on negative. Can you guys identify? How are fear thoughts negative?
Well, would that be negative because it's a lower vibration?
Can you repeat that? Sorry, Janet. Would it be negative because? Sorry, Janet. Can you repeat that? The dogs are barking and right straight
Woof,
into
woof,
my
woof,
ears.
woof, 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 meow.
No, I literally couldn't hear it because that's why I had to turn off my mic here for a sec.
The fear thoughts are negative due to the frequency of the vibration and it being so much
Okay.
lower.
All right, that's coming from someone who's obviously informed about, like the vibrational aspect, the energetic aspect of specific type of thoughts. All right, but if we think a little simpler, just in a very sort of common sense way, what about fear thoughts is negative? What do we perceive as negative?
Probably when I hammer it down to the lowest common denominator, it's survival.
Yeah, I mean, but be a bit more practical, guys. I mean, like if I look at something that creates a fear thought in me, right? Let's say I'm seeing a bunch of knives laying on the table, and I have a 2-year-old. Okay, and there's a fear thought in my head, right? What would that sound like? Can anybody enact that? bunch of cooking knives, sharp knives on the table, just laying around. Okay, and I have a 2-year-old that's maybe, you know, eating something on the table. What's the fear thought saying?
An urgent call to action.
Yeah. Okay. So you skipped a few steps, but fundamentally the fear thought is saying, oh, this is dangerous. This could lead to a disaster. Yeah. I need to do something about that. Okay. But an urgent call to action. Is that a negative thing?
No.
Do we perceive it as negative?
Probably in your body when that happens.
Yeah, but just okay, then stay on here for a second, Linda. Then describe or define a negative feeling in your body.
So when I go into fear, it's that fight, flight, freeze, and so
All right.
it's attention.
Did you just say attention?
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, so the initial reaction in our body, yeah, and then as a consequence of that, for our whole entire system, when we have a fear thought, is like an alarm bell, right? It's like, pay attention. That's not negative at all. That's actually calling us to like look at the situation, because in this example, yeah, a lot, you know, cooking knives, sharp knives laying around right next to where a 2-year-old child is eating something, or, you know, drawing something or whatever, musters a thought in us that says this could be dangerous. And it motivates us to change that, right? Let's just break it down into very, very simple terms. What is the solution to this call for attention and immediate action, as you just said it? Well, the solution is to do what?
Put away the knife.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yeah, don't forget the simple things in life, guys. Okay, because when it comes to fear, it's a very simple, hardwired response in us, okay, that requires action. First, it requires attention, and then it requires action to change the situation. All right, so that is a healthy response, a healthy fear thought. Ooh, this could be dangerous. I better take the knives away. I better remove the danger. Okay, when do we get in trouble with that? When we cannot really figure out how to act, when we don't know what to do, right? That's when we get in trouble. So seeing something like a 2-year-old and sharp knives in the same scene is a simple equation. You remove the knives and the child is no longer in danger. Okay, so we're gonna have to go a little deeper here when it comes to fear thoughts, because fear thoughts aren't negative in nature. And Janet, not all fear thoughts have a lower vibratory quality to them. Yeah, so fear in and of itself is an important response in us, yeah, that comes out of our biological and, you know, intellectual hardwiring. So when it comes as such a simple thing, like, you know, you see something that could potentially be a danger, and you feel motivated to remove the danger, then it's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay. But what is the problem with something like thinking that it might be dangerous, but you don't know for sure? Or
For me,
something like, did I turn off the stove? Right? you left the house and you have a fear thought that says, did I turn off the stove? Anybody ever had that?
Never.
Never? Was this sarcasm?
Yes.
Okay, so let's describe that situation then. Okay, so you're sitting in the car and you just left the house. You got to go somewhere, like say an appointment where you have to be on time, so just to up the pressure a little bit. So now you have conflicting thoughts, right? You have the thought, oh, I need to be there on time. Okay, I got to keep going. And you have another thought, oh, did I turn off the stove or did I turn off the oven? You have a conflict of thoughts. Now, if you don't necessarily have to be anywhere and if you have all the time in the world, you would probably go back, if you're not too far from home, and double check, right? Or text somebody who's home and ask, hey, can you check if the stove is turned off? Why would you do that? Because in that moment, you can be at peace. You can have peace of mind, right? But what if your thoughts are so conflicting that in that moment, you can't really decide what to do?
Yeah, that's the good example. Not the same example, but the in bed thing. So for me, it's rumination and running around in circles and not taking action. So not
All right.
finding no resolution, or not
Thank you.
doing a resolution.
Yes, that's it. That's what we experience as negative, Linda. Not the fear thought itself. Now, there's, a condition, that's called anxiety, where a person has excessive fear thoughts, where they see a danger in everything or mostly everything, yeah, or in tiny things that aren't really that important, where that ability to discern whether this is pressing, yeah, or whether this has priority right now, for example, gets overridden by, this constant state of fear. That is the one, Janet, that you were referring to. It's the energetic state of fear. I am in fear. Okay. I see the world as hostile, or I see everything as a struggle. I see everything as directed against me. That is what psychologists would call anxiety. Okay. Because you suspect some kind of threat behind everything, or mostly everything. In that case, and even minor cases where let's say you're hypersensitized, yeah, you like a fire alarm that a smoke detector that goes off when the toaster is on. Yeah, I used to have a smoke detector like that. Yeah, so every time just a little thing happened, the whole big alarm bells came on. Right? And that can then lead to a person being in this sort of hyper aroused state all the time. Okay. The role of our thoughts in that is that there is some kind of mechanism in us that immediately goes to, like, say, worst case scenario with everything. That is the level on which that we want to investigate here, because what in us is creating these thoughts? Where do these thoughts come from? And are they even your own? So let's go through an example that you guys experience in your life, if you will. Who wants to share a real life example of, a situation where you really can't shake off these fear thoughts?
I have one very real one if nobody else does.
Okay, go ahead.
What came to me was the with the number of houses I've been in and the number of different people I've dealt with around housing and a place to live, I easily now, as soon as there seems to be some sort of disagreement with anything, it seems, get this, it's fear, but it is definitely has subtle nuances to it about losing a home. And yeah, the base fear is like, oh, I'm going to lose my home again.
Okay, there's a base fear.
Yeah,
Okay.
it could take, and I know that could take the situation, somebody else were to come in and look at what was going on in that very moment, they'd probably be able to have a different feeling and observation. I mean, a lot of times it's kind of been right, but I can also see where it's now, it just comes up from what I can only guess is the memory, you know, like a memory bank
Yes.
and an emotional
Yeah.
block in me where I'm holding on to it or something.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's your experience, right? So you've made the experience that you can lose your home. There's some kind of track record, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe more likely than not in your life that, I mean, let me just counterpoint this here. Linda, have you ever had the fear of losing your home? Like the immediate fear of losing your home?
No.
No. Okay. So Janet, this is neither good nor bad, but it supports your assumption or your theory, namely that it has something to do with your experience. So somebody who has experienced certain things, and especially if it's a repetitive kind of experience, yeah, which we then call track record, right, is obviously more likely to come to a conclusion, yeah, be it a positive or a negative, by the way. Yeah, so someone who's experienced a lot of negative things, in this case, the example is, you know, losing your home for whatever reason, yeah, more than once, say, and it was unclear why this happened, or it wasn't really based on, you know, anything that you perhaps, you know, initiated yourself, but something that happened to you based on like people being, you know, non-committed, non-trustworthy, non-integrous, right? This is, I think, where your example goes, right? Where you had a commitment or an agreement or something, and then all of a sudden, I don't know, they changed their minds or that didn't live up to their promises or something along those lines.
Yeah,
Right?
variances and all of everything you've mentioned, including, yeah, turning to, you know, the negative sort of person where I thought it was good sort of thing, really bad.
So the example that you're making is pointing at something that we haven't even discovered or uncovered yet, namely trust, right? So when I look at your example, you know, the reason why your thoughts are more likely to go into a certain base fear, as you called it, besides the fact that you have a track record, apparently, of losing your home, is that there is some kind of trust issue involved with that. Yeah, which means that, you know, if you look at not the track record itself, but if you look at the, you know, like how this occurred in your life, yeah, that there was some kind of trust that you had in a person, yeah, that then later turned out to be not trustworthy, yeah, or broke their promise or something like that. So here in this case, this is a very good example. Yeah, there is something that doesn't match up between trust and the importance of that, you know, like what the fear circles around. So let's say, Janet, yeah, that from your personal experience, yeah, like landlords or roommates or whichever people are involved in this fear scenario, yeah, are not trustworthy. Okay, more often than not in your experience. Okay, but because of the nature of the problem, namely that it's so essential, right? Home is essential for you. I'm kind of reading this between the lines. I mean, it's essential for all of
Yeah,
us,
it
but
is very,
you
very
know,
much
for some people it really isn't. So it is
true. It
essential
is.
for you. It has a top priority, if not the priority, because I know a little bit of your story. Okay. And yet there is this this disappointment or this reality, yeah, that you somehow keep getting into situations where the trust that you put into the person involved, yeah, landlord or organization or whatever, gets violated. Okay. Here, from your personal subjective experience, your fear is actually valid. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Based
yep,
on your track record, that's valid. The question is, do you understand why this is happening
right.
and what it is that you can do about that? Because obviously, we came to that conclusion earlier that, a fear thought is there to make us pay attention and urge us to action. Yeah, some kind of action step. The problem is when we don't actually know how that, repeating, in your case, a break of trust or, like disaster occurs, then we don't really know what to do about it. And then obviously the rest is probably self-explanatory. It then leads to a feeling of powerlessness, right? You feel, I guess that's how you feel. That's why you use this as an example. It makes you feel like no matter what I do, I keep running into, situations where I can lose my home. What would, if
You
you
know what
break it down
happens
like
though?
that?
You know what happens at that moment before you go on
Mm-hmm.
is if I think if I have to, oh, I have to, I'm so practiced at it that if I have to think, oh, I need to get a new home, I kind of naively guess that well, no, I can't. I think I'm a little bit more wise to the fact and could kind of perceive ahead that, well, I'll be a little bit more careful when I choose the next one. But I can
Mm-hmm.
feel initially I have this very naive kind of, oh, okay, here I go, I'm going to move. And
Right.
without, I just have to take the next thing, kind of really, sort of, sometimes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not be able to discern or be just, I forget the word, be discerning, I guess, and being able to have a real choice, I guess. Yeah.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Can you still hear me? My computer
Yeah.
says connection lost. Okay. That's exactly it, Janet.
Hmm.
Okay. So, you know, it's not the fear thoughts that are the problem. The problem is that measured by the priority that this subject has in your life, okay, and the repetition that occurs is that the one piece that is not matching up, yeah, is your action in regards to making sure that this doesn't happen again. Yeah, so the simple solution here would be that whatever the next contract or agreement is that you have, you make sure that this doesn't happen. Yeah, so trusting is a nice concept, but if you have experienced the violation or the breaking of the trust over and over again, then you're going to have to nail it with a contract, with something in writing, with things that make it less likely to happen, so that you can have peace of mind. It
Hmm.
seems a little duh, but
You know what it happens? You know what I think part of what happens, and I have a feeling this probably happens to a lot of people in a lot of circumstances, is
uh-huh.
this base need of a home. I mean, there's a lot of circumstances one might rush into something and all that kind of stuff. That's understandable. But this base need of a home, all of a sudden, that perception that we might have to have a little bit of I'm going to use the word precognition into it, to be able to sit with it and push our energy a little bit further into the situation. I think it's easy for us to be in denial at that point and not want to see the truth moving forward with it, and not be open to that, because you found something and then you start blocking. I start blocking, or others start blocking our receptivity to a wider information thing. Like, maybe I was supposed to be moving to, Timbuktu, but I'm not hearing that because this is right in front of me, and it is the next logical safe step sort of thing there.
So if you were, just to go with your narrative right now, if you were supposed to move to Timbuktu, but you're not, okay, and instead you're trying to find something like a quick fix or something, all right, and you're not really paying the according amount of attention, you're distracted, okay, you're not really doing what you're supposed to be doing, okay, and this could also include things like, do your due diligence, or any kind of inner impulse. I don't even want to call it inner guidance. Okay, if something has a top priority level for you, okay, then you have to treat it that way. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what your inner guidance says, because obviously your inner guidance isn't working well. And maybe the problem why there is a conflict of interests, if you will, in the first place, has nothing to do with, the landlord or this or this or that. Has something to do with something else, okay? But the power that allows you to cut through all that is that you understand that, when this is a priority in your life, let's say another example would be money. Often goes hand in hand with home. If money is the top priority, then our actions should also be geared towards that top priority.
Yes.
That's how that matches up. If home is your top priority, then that needs to be literally the focus of your attention. Things like trust, things like intuition, things like higher perception, screw them. They're not going to help you in that moment, because it is, when you identify something as a top priority, and you already have a track record that, all these other elements of your perception, keep sort of getting you into situations where you make negative experiences, then the actual task here for you in this case is to stop doing how you have been doing it, and maybe doing it like, somebody who is really interested in keeping their home. Like, screw spiritual thoughts, okay, because that is a top priority for you. If this is influencing you, and this does that with home for everybody on a level that it literally takes out all your inner integrity, right? Because obviously when you get kicked out or something like that, or you have to like rush to find a new home, all the higher thinking, the higher goals, they go out the window,
Right.
Immediately. So there is a certain level of acceptance needed that some fear thoughts, it's like with the knives. I mean, you can't meditate that away. You got a 2-year-old and sharp knives together, that you're going to have to act. All right. And that's a very simple 3D type of action that is needed. We don't need to think about what we're supposed to do or what this means or, these kind of things. Not when your personal experience, your personal story points at this repeated sort of loss of a home, say. And
right.
What you guys see here on the screen, okay, what influences your thinking, all right, this could also be what influences your energy or what influences your emotions, okay, because it influences us on all these levels, ultimately, okay, is a hierarchy, okay, there is, let me just hijack you here for a moment. There is on the deepest level something like a soul task, yeah, and that is something that is being sort of stored in us in form of what we typically call higher self. It's unconscious to us, yeah. There are situations where when we really trained us to connect with our soul self, where we can get very clear information, but it is for the most part unconscious to us. And then we have a true heart's desire. The true heart's desire is communicated to us through our true self, and that often comes to us as intuition. Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I see people having, like, for example, career choices that they're not happy with. Yeah, they're not happy with, the job that they have or the career that they've done. But there's something in that, all right? They're following some impulse that they're not fully aware of. They just haven't found the right type of job or career yet that matches that. Yeah. So, for example, if you think along archetypes, yeah, somebody who's a healer type, okay, will always gravitate to jobs that are somehow linked to being of service, maybe customer support, or not, I'm not talking about healing arts, yeah, but a lot of times people whose true heart's desire is to be of service or to be of somehow healing for others will always end up in jobs that kind of do that, but they haven't found the right one yet. Yeah, so when they're unhappy, it's not because of their career choice per se, but it is, the conflicts that they have alongside those jobs. Like, for example, you want to be in customer service, but you end up in a government job, that comes with a lot of restrictions, and social workers, for example, have this a lot. Okay, they end up in places where, their ability to actually excel and thrive in their job is so restricted due to all the regulations and rules that are there, right? So they're super unhappy about the job that they have, but they have unconsciously or intuitively actually following their true heart's desire. It just hasn't matched up yet. Now, if you look at the life view, the personal story and experiences, that would be something that applies to you, Janet, with the home. Here is where our personal experiences and obviously, also our trauma and so forth plays into our perspective. Okay, so you saw this a lot during COVID, people who generally feel like they're not in control of their bodies, of their health. Their perspective was, of course I need to, socially distance, I need to lock myself up, I need to vaccinate myself and so forth, because the perspective based on their personal life experience told them that, they need to protect themselves from others. But then on the other hand, you had, like, I don't know, like what, 30% or so of people who feel generally in control of their health, yeah, who are aware of things that strengthen their immune system, who are, sort of in tune with their own health, who didn't experience the whole COVID thing as a threat at all, yeah, and didn't share that same perspective, and therefore made completely different choices during the pandemic time. Is this clear? Yeah, so their thoughts were different thoughts. Okay, all of us had fear thoughts because they were, really propagated. Yeah, we were fed with fear thoughts, but the choices that people made were very, very different. Yeah, is this something that you guys experienced? Like just being surrounded by lots of people, and yeah, like where you could see like, whoa, this person has a completely different perspective. That's why I used the pandemic, because the perspectives couldn't have been more opposite during this time, and still are, really, if you think about it. So the life view and our overall perspective on life does influence our thoughts a lot. Yeah. For example, the thing with the stove, yeah, like these kind of fear thoughts, like you left the house and you know those what ifs, yeah. When it is about the house and there's nobody home, I don't care. Okay. When it is like I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm too far out now. You know, if the house caught on fire, it already caught on fire. It's not, you know, at this point, you know, I can't prioritize that. But if I know that, you know, let's say my dogs and my kids are sleeping in the house, you know, I'm not going to go anywhere, but return and make sure, yeah, that is taken care of. Because in my life perspective, my dogs and my kids, or my kids and my dogs, they're the most important thing in my life. I act according to my priorities. I'm very, very clear on that. My perspective on life is very, very clear to me. Yeah, I know what my priorities are. Now, the next layer that can influence that, and the way this is ordered here is that these things can override. So whatever is here can override whatever is here in the lower areas. Okay, my ego, all right, my pride, my opinions, my you know, like how I want things to be, can override all of these things. For example, Janet, if you allow me to use your real life example, in your case, I think part of your personality is that you are over trusting, yeah, and that you just want it to work out. You want to trust. Is that fair to say? That's part of your personality. You want to be able to trust people. And underneath that maybe is a deep desire to, you know, just wanting to see the positive.
Yeah, I think it's even not just mental. It's total. It's like it's like a cement road of trust. That's really hard. It's where my you know, even if it's very subtle, it's there, and it can, like you're pointing out, obviously, override me, then breaking into a wider mindset of possibilities of questions to ask, or you know, giving things a little bit more time and things like that. Like it kind of blocks some things out, even though trust is very nice.
Yeah, so you want to trust. Okay, that's an ego want. Especially for someone like you who has a personal story and experiences where that went south. So the confliction here is that your ego wants to trust, wants it to be easy, wants it to be in a flow somehow, but your personal experiences don't actually allow you to think that way. Yeah, because you know you've already experienced so much disappointment there that in that conflict between these two, where the ego wants to just have it easy, yeah, doesn't want to think of confrontations, doesn't want to think of things breaking apart, all right, overrides, you know, your personal experiences. Because if yeah, like this could be applied to any other subject. I see this a lot with relationships, yeah, where people have had negative experiences in relationships, but they keep choosing to trust the same type of, you know, or not trustworthy kind of person. And again here, you know, what is expressed in that, yeah, is not necessarily good or bad, but what is expressed in that is that there's a mismatch here, yeah, and often also here, okay? So they're experiencing something, like say, they're falling in love and they want this to work out. They want this to be the relationship, the forever relationship, say, yeah? And they want this so bad, okay, that they override their own personal experiences, yeah, and perhaps their intuition. Because if I talk to people who've had multiple negative experiences in relationships and ask them, well, did you feel anything in the beginning, like, you know, like after the fact, right, in hindsight? And they say, yeah, I did feel it right from the beginning, but, you know, I wanted it so bad. Yeah, so we have to understand how our thinking gets influenced and conflicted. Yeah, this is also something here. The level 4 is something that is being used by advertisement and media. Okay, because if you think about it, jumping back to the COVID, the pandemic time, a lot of our perspectives and opinions have formed through secondhand contamination. Yeah. So, for example, the statement, COVID is a deadly disease. That was the first year, right? Basically telling us through secondhand, through media, that if you get COVID, you die. Right? Did you guys all kind of make that sort of connection in your head without, reading any research or, doing your due diligence? Did you guys all like have a point in your life where you, or during this pandemic, where you thought maybe only at the beginning, but if you get COVID, you're gonna die? It's like a death sentence. Raise your hand who thought this. I did. I didn't truly believe it, but that was the energy that was coming in. That was what was propagated. It formed a superficial opinion in me. And that opinion was, I have to avoid COVID at all cost. Because if I get it, I die. That was literally the hardwire that was being formed in my head, in my thoughts. And then I did something that, because of my scientific training, was immediately triggered in me. It was like, oh, well, before I have such an opinion, yeah, because there was something in me, yeah, that told me, this doesn't feel right. Yeah, that made me read all the research. And once I saw all the research, I immediately changed my opinion about COVID. I knew that the survival rate was, 99%. So that's not a deadly disease where the survival rate is 99%. And I knew that the things that, can increase the immune system, that respond really well to COVID, the infections and so forth. So I went into, taking my own health authority, yeah, and strengthening my system specifically to that. So that if I get it, yeah, that I make sure that I'm not going to die from it. So my discernment allowed me to override my ego, because my ego got triggered. My ego was like, oh shit, we're all going to die. But my consciousness said, let's discern. Let's not just take that opinion because it is being propagated through media or through advertisement or whatever. And then there was something that was, a little later down the road, and that was like, the steadfastness to say, nope, not buying into this, regardless of the public opinion. But you see here, this is then, sort of how collective energies can influence us on all these levels. So the steadfastness comes out of the harmony of all these. Yeah, to be clear within myself, to be conflict free about what I'm seeing, what I'm thinking, and what the conclusions are that I choose to draw. Okay, so my conclusion was, if I get COVID, I'm not going to die. All right, and yes, maybe I get sick a little, and yes, I know what to do in order to make myself become strong and recover quickly and so forth. And therefore, my whole system relaxed. It relaxed so much that I had the power, the energetic power, to start a school, because I didn't want my child to have that kind of social distancing and face mask experience. And the power that I had was so great that I could attract other parents who thought the same way, who were thinking the same way as I was, against all odds. No face mask, no social distancing. Yes, they had to wash their their hands, obviously, but that's just normal hygiene stuff. And it allowed us to grow beyond something that was, you know, a really, really strong, or still is in some of your countries or some of your areas, outer influence. Yeah, a collective influence. So only after like a year, so like a year ago, I realized, oh, this is funny, because I have nothing to do with schools. I'm not a school administrator or anything like that. I have no experience with this. Why am I doing this? And why am I loving this? I love this. Because there was something in me that responded as soon as I could overcome my fear. And that was that here. I realized that there's an unconscious element to all of this. Yeah, that I have been, obviously I could see this in hindsight, that I have been following all my life without knowing it. And that is to create different teaching paradigms. That is to, you know, like educate people. Obviously, this is how you got to know me. Educate people through a different way of thinking and feeling, and ultimately, you know, also learning all the different aspects that play into this, like the spiritual aspects and the energetic aspects. And it was clear to me then, like about a year and a half ago, that even though I felt completely out of my water and I was very scared, you know, because I've never run a school, I don't know anything about this. I felt very, you know, anxious about this. That what I'm doing here is very congruent to who I am. Not through I wanted to see myself. I didn't want to see myself as a teacher or a school person. Yeah, my ego was rebelling against it. My ego said, oh, what are you doing? This is not your job. This is not your business. You know, you don't know anything about this. Okay. So my opinion to it, running a school was like, I shouldn't be doing this. I should hire somebody to do this. And I may still do that, but my higher self informed me that this is something I need to do. I really need to do this. Yeah. And that allowed me to discover something that I call like the true heart's desire that has been weaving through all my life. Yeah, namely to somehow renew or evolve ways of teaching. Yeah, so if you think about it, what I do with transCODES is showing new ways of learning to you guys. Yeah, using energy sessions for learning. That's a completely new approach. So I wanted to give you an example how consciousness ultimately though has the higher power here over all of these other aspects in us. Yeah, because it is something that can tap us into the larger perspective. And that's the stuff that is going wrong. And how is this happening in our 3D world right now? You heard me say this maybe in the last energy talk. I said there's a war out there over your ability to concentrate, over your ability to think, to feel, and to perceive on your own. Without going into conspiracy theories and without going into like the mechanisms of mind control, because there's other workshops that we've done that you can watch on YouTube. There is a war out there over your ability to concentrate. What does this mean to you? To clearly think, to clearly feel, to clearly perceive on your own. How do you think that applies to you? Or does it apply to you? Do you feel the same way?
I find it's very true in multiple ways, and I've perceived it in multiple ways, and as well as The better word is to dealt with it in multiple ways. Yeah, it's like, I think even like years and years ago, it was like this is total ego of, even like you think I follow with, trusting doing business with somebody, like a shop or something. And they're just being silly little problems that you just wanting to take your attention, that just seem like, yeah, you could be forgiving of it, but when it becomes so consistent, like, this is like, there's not enough room for my head. So that's when I started to see that, and I've seen it a lot more since then.
Yes, what it does, it impedes, it blocks our ability to make a conscious choice because we're getting distracted. We're getting distracted, in your case, Janet, with the home. You're getting distracted from the fact that that's top priority for you. There's something that overrides it.
Yeah, and there was really recently, it happened really recently in a really bad, unusual way for me, where because of the woman, I have to say, because of her, because I was giving her so much more attention than I had to anything else in the last 3 years probably, and that really overrode some of my timing and some of these things with a trip that I made back to the United States, and it really messed it up. And it's interesting to be able to discuss it because, of course, part of me says, okay, now what's wrong with me? But my first intuition was like, it was total smokescreen.
Yeah. Now, sometimes people do this on purpose, right? Like people, scammers, or people that are ripper offers or whatever. And when it comes to like media and so forth, we all know that there's different agendas in the game, right? So let's just put this aside. But there's a lot of situations in life where this doesn't actually happen, out of, like, say, like purpose. Okay. When people are, like, say, energetically high maintenance, yeah, when you feel that they draw a lot of attention from you, whether they do this on purpose or not, let's just put this aside for a minute, because most people actually don't do this on purpose. They're not aware. But what we can become better at is the discernment here, namely that is actually taking something away from us. It is taking away the ability to concentrate on, let's say, our values, our priorities, things that are important to us. And with that, in your case, Janet, that might be a good way to proceed from here. Yeah, that you use your willpower. Okay, this has to come from your willpower. Yeah, but third chakra, solar plexus, to not let yourself get distracted. To really hone your focus on the things that are most important to you, so that, because once that's resolved, you can start paying attention to other things again. Yeah, you can be more spiritual again, or you can be more generous again. But until that is resolved, you need to stay.
It's true. It's the will to step into a wider, and it would have to be a safer space, because then it would be a wider, safer space, both for yourself energetically, but also in a physical space. Then the other things have more room to function in it, rather than into all this chaos.
Yes, because, and this is why I'm showing you this slide here. If there's a problem that is in 3D, it needs to be addressed in 3D. Because everything else, is basically based on it. You can't address a physical problem, like home is a physical problem, with an energetic approach. You can use the energetic approach in addition to the physical approach once some of the fundamentals are cleared, right? Let's say if you have to choose, if you have a choice between two homes, two different contracts or two different people, two different areas, yeah, and both are available to you and both are sound. Okay, in that case, you can use your energetic perceptivity and say, which place feels better. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, like that is something that when I counsel people and finding a home to buy or moving into a different area that they don't know, all right, then the strategy is pretty clear. You look at multiple things, you try to make as many experiences, like due diligence as you can, and when you have the choice between 2 or 3 different options, you pick the one that feels the best. Yeah, but all of them have to first provide a certain 3D security, if you will. Yeah, because the purpose of a home is to provide that. And if that's not there, yeah, let's say if I have the choice between a house that is a little bit over my budget or a lot over my budget, say, and I really, really want it, but I can't really promise or to myself, or I don't exactly know how to finance it, and then that's not really enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to a home that is maybe sort of slightly below that. It's not as good as the other one, but the financing, the budgeting, all that is sound. Yeah, and and the contract and all that is feasible, doable, and so forth. So I first have to make sure when I look at an issue, yeah, like in your case is home. What is the nature of that? What is the nature of the issue? Is it a 3D physical issue? Is it an emotional issue? Is it a mental issue? Is it a spiritual issue? Or is it an energetic issue? What do you think?
Oh, well, initially it's a physical thing.
Yes, I mean, there's obviously, everything is energy, right? At the end of the day, everything is an energetic issue, but this has a sort of a no nonsense black and whiteness to it.
It has to
right?
like come together and coagulate into some place for your body, because it's the same thing with the body. If you're going to pretend like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me, but for some reason, I can't go to the bathroom at all, then you're ignoring the fact that the physical isn't okay. So the home would still be bringing together of all the energies and being like, yeah, this is what I need.
Yeah, with home search, I have this a lot with people. Like, they really want to have a certain lifestyle. They want to have a garden. They want to have a pet, and they find their dream home, but it doesn't allow pets.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with the home, but it restricts them in their own expression in that way. Yeah, or somebody finds out, like I'm that type of person, that a bathtub is really important to me. It's an energetic thing, and it's also physical, but it is mostly an energetic thing, because for me, being able to take a bath is a really big sort of clearing thing. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is.
I would never rent a house or buy a house that doesn't have a bathtub.
Right.
No matter how good it is, unless if I buy it, and I get it cheap, I have the budget to remodel the bathroom and put a bathtub into it. I can delay for a little bit, right? I can say, okay, for a couple of months I won't have a bathtub, but then, I'm gonna have, the nicest bathtub in the world. Yeah, like that's totally okay.
Well, but at least too, see with that you have a structure too. Again, it's a very physical thing around which to keep building, like the importance of the animals and the children. You have to keep.
I know what my priorities are. So that's the part here that plays into our thinking, because there's many different ways of looking at things, and obviously depending on how we look at it, it changes the way we think about it. Yeah, this is why I keep talking about reframing and recontextualizing, because those are the tools that we can use and train. We must train those, yeah, to make better conscious choices. Yeah, we can't just allow our thinking to be single-sided, for example. If we do that, then, you know, we basically run one and the same program over and over again, and, you know, by chance, you know, it will just produce the same results. So we have to change the strategy. And whether or not our strategy before was really bad or not doesn't actually matter, because people can also change, their priorities can change, their values can change. Yeah, so example, before I had kids, obviously, you know, a home that accommodates kids wasn't my priority, right? And someone who doesn't have, like, say, pets, doesn't have a dog, you know, a garden or, you know, like something that is in a pet-friendly area wouldn't be a priority either. That's okay. But the moment the person decides that they want to do something different in their life, yeah, or that they, you know, when they discover that they have certain needs that are now more important than they were before, yeah, like best example, you're pregnant and you're preparing to have children, okay, then obviously your priorities are going to change, which means we have to start this whole sort of conscious choice making process, this conscious thinking process over again. It doesn't change us, it doesn't change what we are. It just changes our perspectives and our opinions and, you know, the things that we deem, you know, as, say, you know, important enough for us, for our well-being. Yeah. And if you look at, this is then ultimately where most people end up. If you look at your own situation where you're kind of traumatized around home, right? The whole subject of home.
Yes.
The task for you would be to change your strategy and to make this absolute top priority.
Yeah, and it's true. Like my brain goes, yeah. But there's definitely times where I would think of that. You know, if you said to me, Jen, you have to change your strategy, I go, okay. And I would just go off, and the word strategy would just be like a vocabulary word I learned in school, and just be like, okay,
Right.
well, like
So,
like a kindergartner doing it all of a sudden. So the trauma of it has interfered, and I have to like
yes.
not give myself psychological help, but just be like, okay, breathe and just
Right. And
let it.
sometimes it can even be a matter of just collective energies. You know, like there are times where, you know, like COVID again is a good example because it had such a huge impact on our collective energies. You know, like how the first year, the real estate market came almost to a halt. And then the second year of the pandemic, the real estate market went crazy. Yeah. And property prices and rents went up, like doubled, okay, within the course of a year. Okay. So that can obviously also influence our options and, you know, like how we have to look at it. A job loss or divorce or, you know, any kind of new condition can change our perspectives and our priorities in a heartbeat.
Yeah, yeah.
But the strategy is always from bottom to top, always. Yeah, so it's always from like the densest to the most fluid one. Okay, it has to be that way because you can't get past your own body and your own body's reactions. You can't get past your emotions that you have, your feelings that you have about something, and you can't get past your thoughts that come in. Yeah, so these first three density levels here of our reality and of our self and our self-awareness, we need to prioritize them. Only until, and this is where spiritual people get into conflict, until they are sufficiently met. Yeah, it has to do with our needs. We have to understand what our needs are and how they are, what the hierarchy is. Yeah, this is this chart here. We have to understand that, you know, that if our, say, biological, physiological needs, if our need for safety and fundamental control in life, if they're not met, it attracts all kind of stuff into our life. Yeah, it produces these kind of energetic states here on the left. In other words, you know, all these thoughts that we have in regards to, you know, what it is to be a good human or a spiritual human, a soul self, and so forth. Yeah, abundance, inner peace, healing, unconditional love, and so forth. Yeah, if you don't have enough food, it matters zero. We can't get past that. Okay, that's why it's, you know, that's why Maslow has created this hierarchy. It is something that, you know, basically determines our strategy. Yeah, so one builds upon another. Now, can we have, you know, a wonderful life with deep connection, living in truth and having great relationships and so forth, but like, say, financial issues, yeah, that kind of temporarily get us into a place of not feeling safe or not feeling in control of it? Yes, we can. And can, you know, the things that we have basically sorted out here in the upper half of our hierarchy of needs, can they help us to out-vibrate these things? Yes, but only temporary states. If we have prolonged states, yeah, of no food, no shelter, yeah, and prolonged in a biological term means 2 months. Yeah, when it comes to financial issues here that impact our stability, yeah, and you know, our sense of control over our life, you know, temporarily means like 1 year, maybe 2. So anything beyond that will be impacting for us. Yeah, belongingness and love, that's the lower level. You know, like just generally, you know, having, you know, 1 or 2 friends in life, you know, that we can talk to, you know, that we feel like, okay, I belong somewhere. I have some kind of anchor here. That can be, you know, more of a long-term condition. A lot of people realize, you know, that there's maybe an emptiness there, you know, after 10 or 20 years. Yeah, so you know, the higher up you get into the hierarchy, the longer it can take to reach those levels or to fulfill those. Yeah, but these down here, yeah, the black, the red, and the orange, or at least the black and the red, that can only be temporary situations, couple of months, maybe a year. Okay, then we need to focus on them. We need to make them absolute top priority, because everything else will suffer from it. And this is where spiritual people often get into trouble with themselves, into conflicts. Yeah, they get distracted because they want to trust other people. They want to see everything as all one and, you know, selfless and, you know, yeah, but no, when you don't have food, when you don't have shelter, that isn't gripping. Yeah, so whatever the issues are that we are experiencing, we need to give them the right priority. It needs to be in accordance, it needs to be congruent with the level that they can influence us. Okay, and the reason why we have trouble controlling our thinking is because we experience high levels of conflict around them. Yeah, so here, for example, this is the energetic stress gauge. Yeah, it shows us how our energy, our energetic well-being responds to issues in particular sort of life, in regards to particular life stressors. Okay, and if the confliction level is very high, okay, it will be perceived as threatening. It will lower our vibration. give you an example, here out of my own real life, yeah, just to verify this, my first husband was a millionaire, a multi-millionaire, but he was completely conflicted about his money. And that put him in a constant state of anxiety about money. That's hard to understand, right? If you're not a millionaire. Do we have any millionaires here?
Not yet. Not yet.
At least not a money, right? Okay. So if somebody who struggles with money, yeah, here's a story like that, you know, you're like, yeah, that's, you know, just ego or something. But it's not. The reason for that was that in the case of my ex-husband, he had inherited the money. He hadn't produced it. Okay. So there was no self-esteem along with it. He grew up with money. It was just there, but he had no control over it. And so his anxiety about money was, what if the flow of money just stops one day? Because he hadn't learned how to produce money. He hadn't learned how to, you know, have a job, you know, or things like that. He never learned that. So for him, this was a real threat, guys. You got to understand this. Yeah, this is why perspective is so relative. Yeah, it has to do with our personal experiences, with the programming and so forth. And obviously also ego and identifications, because if you, like in my ex-husband's example, grow up in this richness, okay, going out to do a job, a 9-to-5 job, is below him, right? It doesn't even cross his mind. That's not part of his worldview. What he didn't realize was that the level of confliction that he had was creating all kinds of energetic issues for him, because he couldn't resolve it. He didn't know what to do. So even though money wasn't actually the physical problem, the way he perceived it, the way he perceived the money issue, caused the same reactions in him, in his body, like it does to you, Janet, or to me, or anybody you know, just on a just different numbers. Just different numbers. And then the other extreme, you know, is someone who, you know, has a very simple life, maybe lives, you know, somewhere, I don't know, in Mongolia or whatever, you know, doesn't care about politics, doesn't care about, you know, like what is going on in the world, and, you know, has a loving family, has, you know, horses or whatever, is a good rider, you know, is out there with the horses and, you know, cares for them and is a good family father, yeah, and has, you know, a simple but very fulfilling life, yeah, who feels that, you know, they can really trust in the people that are around them, and, you know, the horses and, you know, all that, and doesn't have a problem, isn't in any conflict about his situation, is someone who can experience a lot of peace. So why does this person not constantly talk or think about money? Why? Even though he doesn't have any.
It's not a big gap. There's not a big gap in their energy or in their consciousness, because it's fulfilled.
Yeah. They don't want more. They're okay with where they're at. They don't have fear thoughts. I mean, other than the normal, sort of program fear thoughts such as, health and avoiding, accidents and stuff like that. He's in peace with his own choices. Okay. And this is the part that makes things complex with energies, because when you look at energies, you're no longer just looking at, what is, but you're looking at the attitude of the person toward it. And the simple answer to why our thoughts sometimes take over is because we're conflicted. And why are we conflicted? Because something in us isn't matching up. We're either not heeding, our needs. Okay, so here this is the basically. Oops, no, this is sorry, it's the wrong one. We're disregarding our needs, or we never even discovered what our needs are. A lot of people don't even know what their true needs are. They're not aware of it. Or we put other needs, such as money or such as education, for example, over, let's say, true connection, true love, true relationship, or serving others over our own self-care and self-love. Energies or our energetic awareness can show us where that's out of balance. For all of you caretakers out there, yeah, does it make sense seen from an energetic point of view, wanting to be a selfless caretaker, if your own self-love and self-care is restricted or impeded by your selfless caretaking of other people? Does that make sense?
No.
No, it never makes sense.
It
'Cause if
doesn't,
you-
even though, although when I know that I was in that to a certain extent, and it really did take somebody saying it a few times to start to put it into action and then to experience the truth of it, because prior to that, it was just self-sacrifice in a way.
Yeah. If you deplete yourself in the process, how good of a caretaker are you? Or can you be?
It turns out not to be good. You kind of lost all judgment of what
Yeah.
what
You're so
caring for
conflicted.
somebody else is. Yeah, yeah.
You become so distracted and conflicted that you can't make good choices anymore. And oftentimes you don't see the truth of it. So to wrap this up here, guys, the connection between our thinking, our choice making, how we feel about this is quite simple. And the reason why commanding our thinking has to be the first self-mastery task to tackle is because it determines the perspective with which we see things. Yeah, and what spiritual people often want to disregard. Yeah, so being mental has a bit of a bad rep, right? Because we tend to like blame it all onto our ego mind, which is not a very sophisticated point of view. Yeah, the one thing that we tend to disregard is that when we can master our thinking, we can master our clarity. If we cannot master our thinking, we cannot master our clarity. We have no clarity. Yeah, the logic in things, the clarity with which I point things out to you here, for example, if it's a 3D problem, you need to first and foremost have a 3D solution for that. Yeah. If you sacrifice yourself in the course of taking care of somebody or, fulfilling somebody else's needs, and you deplete yourself in the process, you're not a good caretaker. Yeah, you've just proven this. There's a certain logic to that. So you're going to have to understand the mechanism of your own thinking in order to even know if you're in control of your thinking or not. And the part here that comes in, that plays into thinking is, what is my thinking based on? What are the priorities of my thinking? What are the perspectives of my thinking? And that leads back to needs. That leads back to goals. And then you realize that if I'm clear about my priorities, if I'm clear about my goals, I have way less conflicts, right? There's people out there, and I'm sure you know them, their outspoken goal in life is to make as much money as they can at all cost. Sometimes even the cost of their own integrity, or, they have no problems with ripping off people. Do you know those people? Anybody know anyone who has no problems ripping off or scamming other people? Okay.
Yeah.
How come they have so much power?
Good question. Because they've put everything into that one place, even though they personally are off balance. They are.
Well, maybe that doesn't matter to them. Maybe they just don't care.
They don't care about themselves until then they.
Well, no, Matt, and you can't come to that conclusion. You don't know. You don't know that. You don't know what their soul task is.
But if they're imbalanced into that one area, then I'm perceiving that they don't care about themselves and all the other.
No, you got that wrong. No, because you don't know their karma. You can't say that. Okay. The reason why they have so much power is because they're not conflicted about it. As simple as that. See, the difference between you and somebody, who has no problems with being a bad person, say, is that you have conflicts around it. You want to be a good person and you want to see the good in other people, but you keep meeting, like, just to simplify it, bad people. So you have a conflict around it. You could change your perspective, Janet, and you could say most people on this planet aren't trustworthy. Even though I would like it to be different. There you go. Okay. But my reality is, my track record is that I can't trust most people. So I need to change the way I navigate through life.
Yeah, I just coming to that conclusion. I remember about a week ago or so, just going, okay, now just getting a grip on myself, going, you know what? I wasn't going out of control, but just the thought went through my head. It wasn't even a sentence. It was just this feeling like, all right, you just gotta, everybody isn't gonna just be how you want them to be.
No, exactly. That's your ego wanting that. Your ego wants other people to be the way you want them to be.
I want them to be who they are, but it's like,
not really. Okay. You want them to be good people. No. Not all people want to be good people.
No,
okay,
they
so
don't.
You gotta respect that too. That's here. That's when consciousness kicks in. Okay, you're like, oh well, that's just me wanting them to be that way.
Right.
Okay, but they have the right to not be a good person. Whatever I deem to be good. Okay, and that's what allows you to discern. What kind of person am I dealing with? Is this a person who has the, outspoken goal to be a good person? Okay. They say they want to be a good person. All right, but that's not a guarantee. We know a lot of people, most people, want to be good persons. At least they want to see themselves that way. But way more aren't really good people, based on what? Our integrity, or based on our values, based on our priorities. But maybe based on their priorities, they are.
Yeah.
So that with consciousness, you're going to have to accept that too. I'm giving you guys the stats. 85% of the human population on this planet is not conscious, which means that they have zero chance of even knowing this about themselves. Okay, so there's only 15% who are actually conscious enough to say, I want this or I want that. I want to be a good person. And out of these 15%, only roughly 1% actually succeeds in being a good person, a truly good person. You know, where there's no confliction around it, where there's no, you know, where sacrifice, you know, doesn't, you know, mean that they become resentful, yeah, or angry or feel like victims. Okay, so what's the problem with that now? You know, wanting to be a good person, but not quite being able to pull it off in life. How do we call that? We call that karma. Okay, it's everybody's right to, you know, not be able to pull it off. So it's not enough to just look at what people say or what their opinions are about themselves or what their perspective is. The only way how you can increase your chances of actually meeting integrous people is by changing the people that you surround yourself with. And you change the way that the people that you surround yourself with, yeah, you raise the vibration of the people that you're with by continually making conscious choices. And it's something that you continually work on. So you get better at as you go. So discernment then leads to balance, and balance leads to, you know, more harmony. You're becoming less susceptible. Yeah. And that means when it comes to these larger cycles like collective energies, yeah, that, for example, I reported about forced transformation. That's a collective energy right now. Yeah, everybody is doomed to clash with anything that is not true in their life right now. Okay, but if you are already in balance, you won't really be so susceptible to it because you've already weeded the things that are not true to you out. That's where the work comes in that we talked about last time. It's a lot of work. It's a continual work. It's a continual sort of undoing, you know, of these things that are being presented to us as, you know, tasks. And the more conscious we make choices, or the more conscious we can make our choices, you know, the better the circumstances then develop for us, because we become less conflicted about the circumstances that we're in. And that's all based on our thinking. Yeah, our thinking is the first instance, yeah, that allows us to harmonize. If our thinking is conflicted, everything else will be conflicted, guys. So there's a lot of different teachings out there. Hawkins calls it resistance, yeah, because his teaching is based on kinesiology and how your body responds to it. So the more resistance you have to something, conscious or unconscious, okay, the more conflicted you're going to be, the lower your energy, the lower your consciousness level. So the strategy, therefore, or the self-mastery strategy, therefore, needs to be to become more aware of your thinking, how your thinking works, what the kind of thoughts are that you are feeding yourself with, and what the quality of choices is that you make. Then, and this is what we're going to discuss in the next workshop, we're going to talk about how to gain control over your will. Yeah, because let's say you have really good goals, really good priorities. You want to make health your priority. You have a new exercise routine, and you want to change your diet, and you're very clear and not conflicted about this, but you wake up the next morning and your emotions are so low that you feel like you need a piece of chocolate or whatever. contradicting your thinking. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? You're doing something against better knowledge, better thinking. Okay, and that then overrides your thinking. Now you have a conflict. And that conflict takes place in your emotions. Yeah, the way you feel about your thinking and, you know, your actions. For example, Linda, yeah, you have the situation with the sharp knives and the 2-year-olds. You get the impulse, oh, that's not a good thing. That's dangerous. I need to do something about it. But you don't do anything about it. Now you're going to run into problems internally because your emotions are going haywire. You love the baby, yeah, but for some reason, okay, you're not doing what you're supposed to do or what, you know, your thinking tells you to do. And now you have a secondary conflict. Yeah, that has to do with your emotions. So it's obviously not enough. That's why mastering our thinking is just the entry level, guys. That's just the foundation. Because when it comes to mastering your emotions, as you all know, that's a lot harder, right? Well, most of you don't understand is that the reason why your thoughts taking over is because, first of all, you don't even know where these thoughts come from. You don't even know if these are your thoughts. You don't know how your thinking works. Okay, so you disregard that. Yeah, so you create a bunch of conflicts here, and now your emotions react to that. Okay, now you got a double problem. And that's what we're going to talk about next time. For you here as Sacred Self-Healing members, I've put in a second workshop this month, in 2 weeks from now, the Critical Inner Voice workshop, how to consciously work with your negative inner self-talk and your critical inner voice. It's a very practical workshop, and there's not going to be a recording for that. You have to come. You have to show up for that because that's what we're practicing in that workshop. There is already plenty of recordings, 4 or 5, in the Sacred Self-Healing Forum that you can watch. But this one is only for people who show up. Yeah, on the 22nd. So that's a Thursday again. It's a little later, 9 p.m. because it's probably going to take a little longer. Okay. So that is how you apply it. Yeah, because your negative inner self-talk or the critical inner voice is the symptom of an underlying conflict or imbalance. Okay, and that's why I'm going to teach you how to systematically work with that. But you've got to show up for that because it's a workshop, like we have to work it together. Okay. All right. Any questions, anything that you would like to add or comment on?
Thank you for making.
I learned a lot. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you for showing up, guys, because that's the opportunity really in these workshops, for example, to work with real life examples and things that, you know, really bother you, you know, not just some theoretical thing. Obviously, I report about these things in the energy updates and talk about them in the energy talk, but these workshops are the opportunity for you to actually come with your own, you know, concerns so that we can, you know, maybe find a different way of looking at them, you know, at least, you know, get inspired, get impulses to change our perspectives. Linda, since you said you learned a lot, just real quick before I let all of you go, can you give me one example of what you've learned, or maybe where your perspective has changed, or where you just gained sort of a different way of seeing things?
I've got 6 pages of notes. The most recent one that I learned was that the big power comes when you're not conflicted. And I never even thought about that. I didn't know why people who I thought were offside would be so powerful. But then thinking about them being non-conflicted, so I can choose my direction and then work on not having conflict.
Exactly. That's where the conscious choice comes in. It also clarifies the big question, you know, about evilness. You know, because so many people are afraid of evil, yeah, of dark people or evil people. Why do evil people even have so much power? You ever thought about it?
Yeah, that lack of conflict is maybe a lack of conscience.
Well, you know, that's a judgment, Linda. You know, take examples such as like Hitler or something. They're okay with being evil. They're okay with themselves. They know who they are. They know what they want. They have priorities and they focus on them. So the last insight here before you go. Whatever it is that distracts you, that impedes your ability to concentrate on your priorities, is what you're up against. And for many of you, your thoughts are part of this. Your thinking is part of that. Your thinking works against you. And you need to investigate why your thinking does that.
A perfect segue into the critical inner voice course.
Yes. Yes. Why are your thoughts working against you? Yes, the critical inner voice is a bridge between, you know, the pure thinking, the free thinking, and the molding. Yeah, because there's emotions that we have with thoughts. And we can't just separate our thoughts from the rest of us. Yeah, from all the other aspects about us. There's a connection there. But if you don't even know where your thoughts come from, you don't need to worry about your emotions. And why that is, we're going to find out in 2 weeks, and then again in, you know, next month. Yeah, how that is all connected. So thank you guys for coming. Thank you for showing up, and especially thank you for sharing, Janet, Linda, yeah, for volunteering to share a little bit from your personal life, because this is how we learn the most. Yeah, through these real life examples.
I see that too. So thanks for the sharing and the wisdom.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Okay, guys. See you soon. Have a wonderful thinkingness.
No conflict.
Yes, no conflict. Bye.